Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this is going to be the Combat Series episode number 144 for you guys today. And to kick off the Combat Series, we'll start off in the world of MMA inside the UFC world. And I'll be sharing my thoughts on the UFC 328 card, UFC 328 card. Now, I'm looking at this 328 card that will take place May 9th, Saturday, in the world of UFC. I think the card's pretty solid. I mean, you're going to have one world title fight, which will be the main event that I will discuss in a few moments. But then also in the card, you have 3 ranked fights taking place in 3 different divisions. So I think the UFC 328 card could be really good come May 9th in the UFC. Now let's talk about the main event here. In the main event, you'll have Khamzat Chimaev. He'll be making his first UFC middleweight title defense, taking on Sean Strickland in the main event of UFC 328. Now, I do think this is a strong main event for UFC 328 between Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland. Then this will be Khamzat Chimaev's first middleweight championship title defense against Sean Strickland, where he won the title back last summer, defeating DDP by dominant fashion. Now, Sean Strickland did do enough last month in his previous win against Anthony Hernandez to earn a middleweight title shot. I think this was one of the best performances that Sean Strickland had in a long time in the UFC, getting a 3rd round knockout victory a month ago in his latest performance. But honestly, guys, the build-up between Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland is going to be off the charts. Now, I know Sean Strickland's microphone got cut off during the press conference when he was building up towards his last fight against Anthony Hernandez, and Paramount muted Sean Strickland's mic. I don't think they have the right to do that in a big fight against Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland, because it's going to be the talking of Sean Strickland that's really going to build up the fight between himself and Khamzat Chimaev. And I think the trash talking could be outrageous. And I think it could be on the level of what Conor McGregor and Khabib were doing on the microphone with each other, trash talking back and forth with each other, building up that huge championship fight years ago in the UFC. So the UFC, I think they went with the most strategic route in terms of superstardom for a championship fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland over Khamzat Chimaev and Imavov, due to the fact that Sean Strickland can sell a fight, and Paramount wants the biggest fights to be made with the new Paramount deal that they have with themselves and UFC. So Imavov, in my opinion, had a huge 2025. In the beginning of the year, last year, he knocked out Israel Adesanya, scored a 2nd round knockout victory, then earned another knockout victory to close out 2025. He's the #1 ranked contender, I believe, at the middleweight division currently, but I think the UFC went with the bigger fight in their opinion, and Paramount went with the bigger fight in their opinion. Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland. Now, this could be a really entertaining fight. Now, I'm saying Khamzat Chimaev could dominate Sean Strickland, but I could be wrong here, because it could be a mix of Sean Strickland having his way with Khamzat Chimaev due to his good striking abilities. And he does have good takedown defense. Could that be a problem against Khamzat Chimaev, that is an insane grappler in the UFC? I believe he had over 20 minutes of control time when he fought DDP last summer. So if he can stuff the takedowns and win the striking battle, could he be the one to take the middleweight championship off of Khamzat Chimaev's waist? And will the grappling be too much for Sean Strickland to handle? Because like I just said, Khamzat Chimaev's grappling, it is hard as hell to stop that man at the top of his game. And plus, he's rolling in with some impressive victories in the last 3 previous fights against Kamaru Usman on a short notice back in 2023, Robert Whittaker back in 2024, and then DDP last summer. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these two match up against each other. Spoiler, I do believe that Paramount is not going to allow a face-to-face confrontation between Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland a few days before their big championship fight. It's just too much at stake, too much to risk, and possibly the championship fight being canceled for May 9th, because these two guys won't be able to keep their hands off of each other. So we'll see what happens. On paper, I would have to lean towards Khamzat Chimaev, but when these guys get in the octagon, styles makes fights. If Sean Strickland's striking could be too much for Khamzat Chimaev, and with his good takedown abilities to stuff the takedowns defensively, this could be a fight that we could be discussing that could be possibly upset of the year in the UFC, with Sean Strickland being the first ever man to defeat Khamzat Chimaev in an MMA octagon, and to take the middleweight championship back for him to possibly be a 2-time middleweight champion. Or this could be another dominant performance by Khamzat Chimaev that punches his name closer to the top 3 list of pound for pound greats currently in the UFC today. But before I end the segment, there is one fight that does catch my eye on this UFC 328 card, and that is between Sean Strickland and Joaquin Buckley. Now, I think honestly, this fight between Sean Brady and Joaquin Buckley, this could be a fun fight that takes place on this card, and it could honestly steal the show. I think this is a good fight at welterweight. Both of these fighters are within the top 10 rankings in the UFC welterweight rankings right now in the UFC, and both guys are coming off of tough losses, so they definitely have something to prove. You look at Sean Brady's previous performance in November, where he got knocked out against Michael Morales last year in November on that Islam Makhachev and JDM card. And then you look at Joaquin Buckley, he just lost by unanimous decision to Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman, that was inactive for nearly 2 years when he stepped in the octagon on short notice and fought against Khamzat Chimaev. So I think both guys are leaning towards the big statement victories. They're going to do a lot in this fight to prove why they should be considered one of the best in this welterweight division. In my opinion, the best division that the UFC has to offer today. And I'm leaning right now more towards Sean Brady. Now, that's not my prediction, but I'm leaning right now more towards Sean Brady because he's a great overall wrestler, one of the best grapplers in the division right now. And he's scored a huge submission victory against Leon Edwards not early on in the year, early last year, where he went to Leon Edwards' home turf in the UK, made Leon Edwards submit, and was the first ever guy to make Leon Edwards submit in a UFC octagon or MMA octagon, period, in Leon Edwards' career. But then I'm looking at Joaquin Buckley. Like, he is a good wrestler, but I feel like his wrestling abilities were somewhat exposed against Kamaru Usman, that did a really good job stuffing the takedowns and took away Joaquin Buckley's best attributes, which was the wrestling background of him. But I think if the fight is kept standing, Joaquin Buckley does have the advantage over Sean Brady in terms of the striking ability, because Sean Brady's chin has been exposed, and like I just said a few moments ago, in his previous fight against Michael Morales, a dangerous striker, he did lose the fight by knockout. So I think Joaquin Buckley does have the advantage over Sean Brady in terms of the striking ability, but we'll see what happens. But I think this UFC 328 card can be a really good card. But those are my thoughts on the Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland fight, and those are my thoughts on the Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley fight, scheduled to take place May 9th on the UFC 328 card.